I'm here today with Philip Quah, who is with Churches of Christ Victoria in Tasmania. Philip, welcome along and thanks for your time today.
Hey, Tim. Thank you. Great to be here.
And also, Philip, you're also a Director of Exponential Australia, and I really appreciate the input that you bring to Exponential Australia. But today I want to talk to you about Churches of Christ Victoria in Tasmania and the church planting that you're doing through that organisation. Could you just unpack that a little bit for us, please?
Yeah, sure. I think as a movement, and I don't know about other tribes, but it's been a while since we saw a new church plant. And saying about 2 years ago, the boss kind of tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Well, you are the latest church plant in our movement, so why don't you head up a church planting movement?" And I said, no, that's one new church is good enough. It's plenty of work there, but that wouldn't go away. So it's come because I think it's a personal call to be in church planting, and was happy to then say maybe there are others who are thinking the same way as I did. So the first thing was just to ask around tribes, who knows someone's itching to plant a church. So actually the last 2 years has just been working with those early numbers that have come in, and yeah, so it's been pleasing that over the last 2 years at least we have planted 3.
So tell us, Philip, is there a particular model that Churches of Christ Victoria in Tasmania, or indeed yourself, actually favours in terms of planting a church?
As a Church of Christ, there is no favor. Any new expression, any new Christian or faith community, we will consider a plant. I personally favor a micro church, or at least start micro and then end up being bigger. So answer is no for the movement.
Yeah, so let me just go down this track for a little bit. So in the past, you actually used to pastor a very large church, but now you've been, for the last couple of years, you've been planting micro churches. Can you tell us about some of the differences that you're finding as a leader, as a pastor, and why you're now starting to favour the micro church approach?
I think personally, I branched into more micro planting because I signed up in ministry to discipleship.
Yeah.
And I found that personally leading a large church, I became further and further away from the real work of discipleship. It was happening, but it was happening further away from me. And house churches or micro churches gives me that contact with new disciples and be able to work that through. And I'm able to account story after stories of discipleship. Now, look, models are models, yeah, Tim. Yeah. I think the key thing is that we get to the Great Commandment and the Great Commission, which is to train people to love God, love people, love the unfinished work of Jesus, which is in discipleship. And I find that it's easier if it's a micro setting and a network of micro churches to concentrate on discipleship and evangelism.
So, Philip, that really is an interesting point. Do you think that we often put things the wrong way around, where we say we're going to plant a church rather than looking at the church to be a mechanism to help us carry out the new commandment of Jesus and the Great Commission?
Yeah, that's right. I think what a lot of us started out is wanting others to experience what we have experienced in Jesus, and then created a rhythm, a system, and slowly the system became the message versus the relationship that we wanted to teach people about. And I think it would be healthy for any church, any size, any time, to say, well, let's review, what are we really counting?
Yeah, no, that's great. So just recently we had the multipliers event. Exponential had the multipliers event, and part of it we had Bree Mills talking about some of the characteristics of microchurches, and she talked about the WHO, which was small Jesus-centered communities of disciples empowered by the Spirit, or what. That the microchurches seek to creatively engage together in regular rhythms of worship, community, and mission. The why, to see God's kingdom grow, and the how, in partnership with the body of Christ. So she gave a fairly succinct definition as to what she thought the essential components of a microchurch should be. Do you have any different opinions there or anything to add to that?
You're a good student, Tim. You took all the notes that Bree and no, actually, what Bree has described is really articulate for what house churches or microchurches should be. I think the rest is just practically working it out and contextualizing it to the crowd that you're working with or the people that God has called you to. And just making that work for people.
Yeah, so how important is it, do you believe, that microchurches be actually part of a network, or there be some form of accountability in place for them?
It's critical. Well, like anything small, it can happen quickly, but it can also dissolve and die quickly. So if you think about startup businesses or small businesses, if a small business manager is isolated and some problem, which is actually quite common, might be thought of as the end of everything. So I think having a community of practice to encourage and exchange ideas is almost critical, and usually the help comes just in time.
Just in time, that's right. So tell us about the work that you've been doing in planting churches through Churches of Christ. You mentioned that there are a couple of other churches over the last few years that have been planted. Are they also micro churches, or are they different models?
Different models. Once a language group that has slowly evolved and became a bigger component of an English service. Then it branches out into its own service, and then eventually it suits the structure of that church to be multiplied into two, so that they can grow differently. And so that's by language. One was, around someone just seeing a geographical need, just a large population of a language group, and just started a house church like that. So that's one. And the other one has been a replant, I guess, from one location, and they plant into another location, but with a new energy, new vision, new structure around it. It was a service plant, if you like, in another location. So there are different models being done. So right now we are incubating a couple of microchurches in the works.
You also have a church plant happening at Brighton Beach as well. Is that an additional one?
I think that's planned by marriage. Yeah, so at Brighton Beach, a couple of our friends have already been looking at, doing alpha with their neighbors, reaching out, more locally over there, and then, attracted other friends to that area as well. And so they say, oh, let's launch something together, and it happened. And so. See, again, a plant like that needs the covering of a movement or denomination, and we were just fortunate that we were the right fit to get married. So that's a nice one. So planting by marriage. How about that? I just coined something.
That's great. That's great. I'll write that one down, Philip. And I understand with Brighton Beach too, that since they actually went public, they've had at least one baptism every month.
That's
down there,
correct.
which has
It's
been
very
absolutely
exciting.
phenomenal.
Yeah, and so I think that the key thing there is, again, Tim, we come back to this whole thing, that it's not about planting. It's about evangelism and discipleship.
Yes.
If we key in the right thing, don't care about the model, these are the real work.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's fantastic. So as you've been taking the Churches of Christ on this journey, are there any particular tools that you found with it, or is there any particular community of equipping that you found particularly useful? I know that you've undertaken quite a bit. There's a Tampa Underground. I think there's work with Forge. There's probably the New Thing Network. Have you found any of those particular avenues or any others of particular benefit for what you're doing?
Yeah. So those three names are very important names. Underground Network, New Thing. The other one I want to add on is City to City.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So these are great partners. I find, we don't look at denomination or theological doctrine, a set of doctrines, but I found it really collaborative in these spaces, and great resources are available out there.
Yeah, so do you see that this is almost like a new thing happening here in Australia, where there's a far greater degree of collaboration amongst the different groups and denominations and networks, and it doesn't really matter what your particular tribe is, but everyone seems to be wanting to pitch in to help. Is that how you're perceiving things?
Oh, definitely, Tim. It's so refreshing. I'm actually feel quite lucky that I could see it happen in our generation, to see this collaboration across, and just this concern about mission for Australia. When we look outside of ourselves, I think that's where we find we have so much commonality.
Yeah, no, that's
I love it. Love that space.
That's good. Are you excited about the future?
Yeah, I am. I think I can die happy. Let me correct. I think I'll be dying happy because Tim, I mean, like how you articulated with on the aims and the mission of Exponential Australia is to see the needle of church planting tip to 16% over the next 10 years. And to see 1,000 churches being planted every year. There was not too long ago that I thought that would have been a crazy idea, and it's impossible to see. But with this collaboration in place, the desire of people wanting to see mission happen in Australia, I think we might just do it. Yeah, there is this silent confidence. Yeah,
that's so exciting. That's so exciting.
Absolutely.
Philip, we must finish up in a moment, but do you have any further thoughts or encouragement to share, particularly to those who are looking at planting a church at the moment?
Oh, there's so many, but maybe this is one that that's close to my heart. I was born in Malaysia. I came here to get an education and to go back to where I came from and contribute to the country, make a lot of money for myself. But I found myself back here and being in ministry in Australia, and boy, it's hard. Ministry is hard in Australia. There's slow uptake. There is a lot of frustration. But here's the encouragement for those who are like me, who have adopted Australia as our country. There was a parable that Jesus taught about an owner of a vineyard who visited the vineyard one day. You remember that one?
Yeah.
And he looked at the fig tree. He says, why is this tree doesn't bear fruit? Take it down, right? Remember that one?
Yes.
Yeah. So what businessman would put fig trees in a vineyard? And you just wonder, unless he thinks that figs could actually do better than grapes. for his business. And so I know there's other interpretation and hermeneutics around this parable, but the way it spoke to me as a migrant Australian is this: what business does a foreign Christian got to do in Australia? It's better for me to be effective back where I was born.
Yeah.
I would have been more effective. Unless the owner of the vineyard thinks we can do a better job, right? And I'm not saying that we can do a better job, but there's an expectation that if we have been transplanted from elsewhere, that the master is expecting something more. So I want to say to fellow immigrant Christians from elsewhere, it's a time to take Australia as one of our own, love its people, die with the people, and then share the gospel so that everyone can have life. It's a great time to be here. Tim?
That's fantastic.
What do you think? It's true, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
So, Philip, just want to thank you for your time today and your wisdom.
You're welcome.
And you're heading off on holidays tomorrow, so or tonight, should I say? So I hope you have a fantastic time of refreshing.
And no more lockdown next week, please. In Victoria, I mean.
Okay, we'll remember that. Yeah. Thank you and bless you.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks, Tim.